everybody. Today I'm talking about something that's near and dear to my heart. Something that was hugely life-changing for me. And I wanted to come on and share this, my thoughts about it, and just talk a little bit about it because I know that it can be life-changing for fellow INFJs and for just introverts. The 4 types of introverts, I do know that this will be life-changing for you because I do know introverts struggle with this. And specifically, INFJs really struggle with this. And this is, what I'm talking about is our inner dialogue, that inner voice that we have that tells us things about ourselves. And you're probably thinking, yeah, blah, 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 be nice to yourself. I used to think that way until I discovered how powerful that voice truly is. And it became very life-changing for me. All right, so this is what I'm going to talk about today. So stick around because it kind of is interesting. I find it very fascinating, actually. Anyway, if we haven't met before, welcome to my channel. I appreciate you stopping by. My name's Trina Bretnall. I like showing up and putting content out there to help introverts. That's what I like to do, ignite their soul. Specifically, INFJs. I talk a lot about INFJs because I'm an INFJ myself, and I know that it feels like you're constantly banging your head against the wall, that nothing ever works for you. It can work for everybody else. You see everybody else doing things and it's working for them, and we try the exact same things and we fail. And it gets really frustrating. I decided a number of years ago I didn't want to do that anymore. I didn't want to be like this. There had to be a higher purpose. So I started working on myself. I discovered my personality type. I understood my personality type inside and out. And I thought now I would start sharing what I've learned with other fellow introverts and INFJs. INFPs also will benefit from this, and hopefully I can help just one other person. So welcome. I'm glad you joined. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about this inner voice. Do you know how powerful that inner voice, those things that we say to ourselves, talk about ourselves, the things that we say to ourselves, do you know how utterly powerful that is? There's lots of content all over social media about, oh, be nice to yourself, say nice things, blah, blah, blah. Yes, take that to heart. Be nice. It is so powerful. That inner voice controls our actions. When we are telling ourselves that we are not good enough, that nobody is ever going to love us, that we're not going to find anybody, a significant other, we're not going to get a better job. When we say that to ourselves enough, have those thoughts, we stop taking action. That's how powerful it is. You start paying attention to that, you stop taking action with whatever it is that you actually want because you've got yourself believing that you're not good enough. I took a job quite a few years back. This was before I realized the power of that inner voice. I took a job at a local office here in town. It was the worst job of my entire life. The worst place I have ever worked. And I used to say wasted, but I don't say that anymore. I spent about 5 or 6 years there. I got told I was stupid, I was incompetent, I was lazy. They didn't like how I dressed. They didn't like this, they didn't like that. It was horrible. My supervisor was super narcissistic, so you can imagine how horrible. I hardly even looked for another job. I stayed there. Every day I would drive up to that place of work and my stomach would drop and I'd be disappointed because it hadn't burnt down. Yet I stayed there. I didn't hardly ever look for another job because I didn't think that I was worth anything better. I truly believe that because of that inner voice, that what I was telling myself, that's how powerful it is. I didn't take action looking for another job. Once in a while, I'd see something that come up and I'd be like, oh, I'll try, but I'm not going to get it. Send out a resume. My resume was probably pathetic. I probably didn't even reread it, revise it, look for spelling errors because I didn't think I was worth anything. I was worthless. Do you see how powerful that is? Mel Robbins did a podcast on this not that long ago, and I really highly recommend you listening to it. She's talking to a Harvard psychiatrist. I can't remember his name. He tells a story about a man who truly believed he was dead. He was walking around the world, but he truly believed he was dead. He wasn't, obviously. But that inner voice had him believing that he was truly dead. It's super fascinating. I recommend you listen to it. I'm not going to get into detail with it because it's not my story and I'm not a doctor and I can't really comment too much on it, but I did find it really fascinating and I recommend it. I'm not affiliated with Mel Robbins at all. But she has great content and I highly recommend you listening to her. Anyway, talking about that inner voice. Have you become mindful and listened to what you say to yourself? When I was asked that question a while back, I'm like, I'm not that bad. But I did this thing. This lady asked me to just, jot down all the times in a day that I was mean to myself. I was blown away. In a day, I was just the nastiest. I would never talk to anybody like I was talking to myself, ever. Never, never, never. I wouldn't even go and talk to that supervisor that told me I was stupid the way I talked to myself. Yet, I still talk to myself like that. And it was so often in a day. I can't even remember how many times. It blew me away. It made me very sad, actually, that's what I thought about myself. I didn't want to think that anymore. So I worked on changing that. One step to working on changing that is not coming down on yourself. When it happens, just simply rephrase it to what you want to believe. Don't come down on yourself because you're feeding it. But what you really, really need to do, and this is something that people do not like doing. It's just human nature to not like doing this, but it's to turn and look inside of yourself. Where did that voice come from? Where did it come from? What story started this voice? It happened in your past, probably your childhood. What story triggered this for you to believe it? It gets scary. When you start looking back in your past, it gets very scary, and people don't like it. You don't want to go relive those because those stories that you were told, they're not true for one, but they were hurtful. They were very hurtful when you decided to make this voice up in your head that's going to feed this story to make you feel little, to make you feel like you're worthless. Whatever that story was that did it, it was very hurtful. You don't want to go back and relive that again, right? No, you don't. So it's scary, but you have to look at it. It feels like you're standing on top of this huge mountain all by yourself, and you're looking in this cave, and at the end of the cave is a tunnel. You can see it. There's a light at the very end of this tunnel. Little tiny light. That little light is the life that you want. Maybe it's the job you want. Maybe it's the significant other you want, the family you want. Maybe it's you want to travel, whatever it may be. It's the life that you want. It's at the end of that tunnel, that light. You got to walk through this cave to get to that tunnel. Inside the cave are all the monsters that were scaring you when you were a kid that you were scared of. And you got to walk through them. Those monsters are the stories that you were told as a child growing up. That, folks, is called trauma. I'm not going to get into that, but that's another interesting topic to research is trauma. But that's what it is. All those stories you were told is trauma, and that's why it makes a mark in your brain. And you start making up these stories to feed it, to make it true. None of them were true. If you look back at some of those stories and you follow it and, oh, this is where it came from, especially INFJs. We are so misunderstood. We have a lot of trauma from our childhood because we were wrong in any way possible. Any way possible. From teachers to friends, so-called friends, family, maybe your parents, caregivers, all of it. We were wrong to them. And we heard about it all the time. And it gets in your brain and it starts these stories about how wrong you are, about how you're never going to have friends and you're never going to find the significant other and you're broken and you need to be fixed, and it's all made up. All of it is made up stories. People don't like what they can't understand. They don't like what they can't understand. INFJs, introverts are misunderstood. INFJs are massively misunderstood. How do we expect them to understand us when we have a hard time understanding ourselves? Point, right? But anyway, those stories that they have told you about yourself made them feel better. But their level of comfort isn't your responsibility. Their inability to understand you wasn't your responsibility, and those stories they told you weren't true. It was something that they thought to be true. Were they a doctor? Probably not. Were they a psychiatrist? Doubt it. If it was, it's probably not a very good psychiatrist. Right? They didn't know, so they just made a story up to make them feel better because they were uncomfortable because they couldn't understand you. That story got in your head and it feeds you. It feeds you and it knocks you down lower and lower. And until you face it and trace it back to where it came from and realize, yeah, I know that story. That's where it started. I wasn't doing anything wrong. There was nothing wrong with me. I was just a little person. You can change it. That's a load coming off. That's the weight of that story is gone now. It's off, and it does. It feels like a weight is coming off your shoulders. Then you can move on to your next one. And pretty soon it starts snowballing. It gets easier and easier. You realize it's not so scary facing those stories because they're not true, and you're feeling better. And soon that light that you've seen that seems so far away is so close that you can actually feel the light on your skin. It's there. You can touch it. It's life-changing, folks. Life-changing. Become mindful of that inner voice just for a week. How nasty is it to you? You might have to turn and look inside. Find out where those stories are coming from, because I guarantee they're not true. None of them are. It's just what people made up because they couldn't understand you. Couldn't understand you. That's all it is. Simple. Nothing more, nothing less. That's all right if they couldn't understand you. Lots of times I can't understand myself. How can other people understand me, right? And it's a story they made up to make themselves feel better. And it made you feel worse. So now you just got to change that, rephrase it. Just do it. Just do it for a month and see. I guarantee you're going to feel so much different in a short period of time. And then there's nothing stopping you from going to the next one and facing it. It is life-changing. Life-changing. It seriously is. I hope you found this interesting. Again, this is near and dear to me because it really was life-changing, and it's a huge issue. When I hear people say nasty things about themselves, I work in a school, casual, and when I hear one of the kids saying how stupid they are to themselves, I cringe. I cringe. I'm like, no, you're not stupid. You don't know what you're just doing to yourself. Don't say that. I don't get into it that much, but I try to get them to rephrase it. Try to. Anyway, if you found this interesting, please give me the thumbs up so we can push this out and maybe help one more introvert, one more INFJ. And if it feels good to you, subscribe to my channel because you never know what we're going to talk about. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this was helpful. I really, really appreciate you watching, and I'll talk to you real soon. Until then, be nice to yourself and have a fantastic day. Bye-bye for now.